The Seven Deadly Sins is an anime series that people now look at as a joke and a straight punching bag by the anime community. What started as a highly popular magic battle shonen, which brought many people to anime, is now a show that is slowly being forgotten over time, due to how disappointing the anime became due to certain business decisions. This is going to be a video talking about how the Seven Deadly Sins started as a very promising anime that could have become a legend in the shonen demographic, to now becoming one of the most mocked and most criticized anime series in the last decade. The Seven Deadly Sins manga began serialization in Kodansha's weekly shonen magazine on October 10, 2012, and then the anime came out 2 years later on October 5, 2014. When the anime was airing, the Seven Deadly Sins managed to be distributed by Netflix. It was because of Netflix that the Seven Deadly Sins anime gained so much recognition and exposure. Because Netflix is one of the biggest streaming platforms in the world, this was a huge opportunity for people who have never watched anime before to try and check out the Seven Deadly Sins anime. And at the time, not many anime series were exclusively streaming on Netflix, since other platforms like Crunchyroll and Funimation also existed. But Netflix was the only platform to stream the seasons of the Seven Deadly Sins, and they released the episodes in a batch release, so you could binge all the episodes once the episodes finished airing in Japan. So the Seven Deadly Sins became one of the biggest anime series on Netflix, increasing its popularity overall. And it did not stop there. Because the anime was so successful, once the first season ended, fans were eager to want to know what happens next in the story, so they would buy the manga as well. People were very invested in the story and its characters, like Meliodas, the main character, who was very laid back on the surface, but there was a lot of depth and mystery to him, like his ties to the Demon Clan and Elizabeth. Ban was also another fan favourite, who resonated well with the audience. And then we have Escanor, who was introduced in Season 2, who is probably most people's favourite character from the series. So, the success of the anime boosted the growth of the manga sales, which is mainly the purpose of an anime adaptation. It simply exists to promote the manga they are adapting from. And to say that the manga was popular was an understatement. Because when you look at the top 5 manga sales in the first half of 2015, which was shortly after the ending of Season 1, the Seven Deadly Sins manga actually outsold One Piece only by a slight margin. And One Piece is the biggest manga series in the world. But by the end of 2015, One Piece did finish off at the top spot, with over 14 million copies sold, and Seven Deadly Sins came in at second place. That was still really impressive, because that meant it still outsold Attack on Titan, Kingdom, and Assassination Classroom, which were all really popular at the time. That was how well the anime did in boosting the popularity of the Seven Deadly Sins manga. The anime also came out at a good time too, because from 2014 to 2015, that was where we were seeing the end of the Big Three. Naruto's manga had ended in 2014, the Bleach anime ended in 2012, and it was currently in its final arc at the time. So Seven Deadly Sins, another battle shonen series with a magic power system, interesting world, memorable characters, and great action, was a new series that anime fans will be drawn towards after the ending of the Big Three. Especially with its first season being animated by A1 Pictures, an animation studio that is well experienced with producing action-based anime. Series like Fairy Tail, Sword Art Online, Martial, and Solo Leveling were all produced by this studio, and they did a great job in adapting the Seven Deadly Sins manga. The animation quality for the action scenes were great, and the art was very good. The music was also composed by the same man who composed the original soundtrack for Attack on Titan, so the Seven Deadly Sins anime was very well produced. The second season was also animated by A1 Pictures too, and although the quality wasn't quite on the same level as Season 1, it was still well received by the audience. And with the introduction of the Ten Commandments and Escanor, people only got more engaged with the storyline. So with the release of the well-received Seven Deadly Sins anime on Netflix, increasing its popularity, and it coming out at a time where the era of the Big Three was ending, we saw the rise of the Seven Deadly Sins series. But unfortunately, this is as far as it gets. So with the ending of Season 2 of Seven Deadly Sins in 2018, fans were still buying the manga, wanting to find out what happens next, and the manga was still going very strong. But ever since the release of the Seven Deadly Sins movie, Prisons of the Sky, this is where we start to see the fall. The Seven Deadly Sins movie was the last project that A1 Pictures worked on for the franchise. The film underperformed at the box office, and because of this, Aniplex decided to step away from the franchise, meaning that A1 Pictures stopped working on the series as a result. And at the same time, A1 Pictures was also busy with other projects like Sword Art Online and Kaguya-sama, so the Seven Deadly Sins was no longer a major priority for them. And this led to the series changing studios to Studio Dean to handle the anime adaptation for the remainder of the manga. And the change to Studio Dean is where the reputation of the Seven Deadly Sins took a massive blow. Studio Dean isn't as great as an animation studio as A1 Pictures is, so people were worried about this change, and how this would affect the anime series moving forward. When Season 3 released in 2019, people noticed major changes with the anime. The art and animation was subpar, there was a lot of censorship turning the blood white instead of red in some fight scenes, and the character movement just looked very stiff and lacked any fluidity to them. This was extremely evident with the highly anticipated fight between Meliodas and Escanor. This fight was so beloved by fans in the manga version because it was a fight between the strongest members of the 7 Deadly Sins, and that was the first time that we got to see Escanor fight at full power with his ability known as the One. This fight was another reason for why the manga sales did so well back then, because of how good the fights and the character moments were in the manga. This is what excited fans when it came to Season 3, because they wanted to see those moments animated and would hope that the anime would elevate them to a higher degree. But sadly, with the fight between Meliodas and Escanor, the anime instead did the opposite and completely butchered the fight scene that the fans were so eager to see animated. And it didn't get any better from there, because the rest of the season constantly had moments of poorly animated action scenes and just inconsistent art for the characters, where they would look completely different to their manga counterparts and even their early anime counterparts from A1 Pictures. This damaged the reputation of the 7 Deadly Sins anime greatly, and fans online started to mock the series for its bad frames, calling it names like the 7 Deadly Frames. Or, when other anime series have moments of bad animation, people would compare it to 7 Deadly Sins because that is the anime that comes to people's minds when it comes to the topic of poor animation. But this never used to be like this. The show was actually praised for looking visually pleasing during its first 2 seasons, and now the complete opposite has happened. With the release of Season 4, things didn't really get any better. Although there was slight improvement from Season 3, the quality was still nowhere near the level of the first 2 seasons, and Season 4 was supposed to be the final season of the series, but there was no hype nor was there any excitement for this season. The series had been damaged so much that people just lost interest in the anime. And then the manga sales started to plummet as a result, no longer reaching the top 10 selling manga of the years after the studio change. Because fans were so disappointed with how the anime was handled, they didn't care to read the manga anymore and they just left the series. And this was also during the period where shows like Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen and My Hero Academia started to gain more popularity, so anime fans were more invested in these series, especially since those shows have really good anime adaptations. And to make matters worse, they also released a 2-part movie called The Grudge of Edinburgh, and that was supposed to take place after the ending of the 7 Deadly Sins, which focuses more on Tristan, the son of Meliodas. But the movie was fully animated in CGI, and CGI is the one thing that most anime fans hate, so this was just adding more fuel to the fire. And there are cases where CGI can look good for anime, but with the 7 Deadly Sins, it literally looks like a PS2 game with some occasional bad frame rates. It just did not look good.
That is one big pile of shit.
But the animation wasn't the only thing that caused the downfall of the 7 Deadly Sins. Even though it was mostly to blame, but some aspects of the story itself also didn't really resonate well with the audience in the long run. And I am mainly talking about the romance. Now, even though the romance plays a big part in the overall narrative, it's also one of the most criticized parts of the story. And this mainly stems from the fact that the couples in this series have sparked a lot of controversy, like how people think that Elizabeth and Diane might have been groomed by Meliodas and King, or the fact that Barn is married to what looks like a child.
Brother, what's that?
And yes, Elaine is at least 1,000 years old, but anyone with a pair of eyes can tell that she does look like a young child. Now, even though Barn is a great character, people still cannot overlook the fact that his whole love story is centered around what looks like a child, which just makes you feel uncomfortable when you see them act intimate. Even Jericho herself is confused on why Barn found Elaine attractive. So even the story itself is admitting that Barn and Elaine is a bit weird, but it still followed through with this relationship.
Not a great plan.
Then with King and Diane's relationship, it is very questionable when you look at it. Starting from their flashback to the time when they first met, Diane and King promised to love each other since back then, and this set up the romance between them all the way to the present time. But the issue is that this flashback took place 700 years ago. Diane is confirmed to be 750 years old in the series, so she would be 50 years old during the flashback, but that is in her giant years. In terms of her physical and mental state, she was a child during the flashback. Especially since the mangaka Nakaba Suzuki confirmed that Diane in the present is the human equivalent to being slightly younger than Elizabeth, who was 16 years old. So 700 years ago, it's clear she was a child. But King wasn't a child during that flashback. He looked exactly as he did in the present, and he was still clearly a lot more mature than Diane was. And King is confirmed to be at least 1,300 years old, so he would have been around 600 years old at the time. And you're probably thinking that maybe King was still a kid during that time, because he didn't get his wings yet until the end of the series. But the thing is, King sprouting his wings is more of him earning his title of the Fairy King, because that was what his character arc was about. Him being confident and determined to become the next Fairy King. It wasn't a sign of him growing up into an adult or him maturing mentally. King was still the same as he was before he grew his wings. And even Hellbrim, one of his best friends, had the wings during the flashback. So King could have had his wings from back then. He just didn't have the confidence and was too lazy to take on the responsibility of being the Fairy King. So the relationship between King and Diane is just weird because of the massive age gap and huge difference in maturity between the two, and it gives the impression that Diane might have been groomed into loving King throughout her childhood. And then, with Meliodas and Elizabeth's relationship, although it was a bit of a heartbreaking story, seeing how Meliodas constantly had to see her die and reincarnate over and over again, people still can't overlook the fact that he would constantly grope her even when she was 16 at the time with no memory of him.
Oh, sick!
And Meliodas has received quite a lot of hate over time from the fanbase because of his actions towards her, and him meeting up with young Elizabeth knowing that she would become his girlfriend when she grows up is just very weird to see. And these questionable romantic moments were apparent since the beginning, but because the show was still so popular back then, it seemed to have been overlooked, and now that it is popular to hate on it, now people are realizing the core issues in the story. And even in its sequel, they are still doing the same thing with his weird romance, which doesn't even help anything. So on top of the poorly adapted anime from seasons 3 and 4, and then the controversial romance between his main characters as the story went on, the 7 Deadly Sins was just seen in a bad light. And this all started from the movie underperforming, which led to the studio change. Maybe if the movie was never made, the 7 Deadly Sins could have been one of the biggest anime to have come out in the last decade. And that is the rise and fall of the 7 Deadly Sins. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you'd like to see more anime content, please subscribe for more. I'm trying to reach 1000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.